So we've got Nicholas from Brazil. So look, thank you very much for joining us. So my name's Dan Bradbury. For you who don't know, I'm the Director of Brand and Communications at World Land Trust. And this webinar is to tell you a bit about our Spring Appeal, which launched today. I'm very excited to have Nicholas on from our partner. So the idea is that we're going to have a bit of a conversation. I've got a couple of images to show you as well. But I don't think Nicholas and I will be short of words during this kind of 45 minutes. We'll probably have a lot to say because I feel very privileged and lucky to have been to this project as well. So without further ado, Nicholas, welcome. Good morning to you. And I just do you want to just give yourself a quick intro to everybody who's on the call?
Hello, everybody. My name is Nicholas Locke. Thank you very much, Dan and World Land Trust, for having me today to be able to speak a little bit about this particular land purchase. This is just one in a mosaic of various properties that we've been able so successfully to succeed in purchasing to form what is the Guapiaçu Ecological Reserve. We're located in that famous Atlantic rainforest, a real biodiversity hotspot that's just located about 2.5 hours from Rio. No, not less than 2 hours in Rio. And we are just at the base of the continental platform. So we have my backdrop, looking out of the window here at the office, I see this mountain behind me, a mountain totally covered with verdant, tropical, lush forest. And this is really the divide between the African and the South American continent around about 150 million years ago. I came out here in 1979 before many of you were born, and it's just I just found myself wanting to work in farming. I'm actually what we call a farm manager by trade, and came out here to farm. And I just fell in love with this place. And after a few years, my wife and I, we decided to dedicate our time to protect as much land here as possible. And the World Land Trust has helped us almost since its very beginning. When we set this project up in 2001, it really came on board in the late 90s. And John and Viv helped us enormously in those early years in directing us and helping us come to the way to actually protect tropical ecosystems. And we've been incredibly successful today building up this wonderful reserve.
So I think this is an opportunity. I'm going to share a couple of pictures, actually. I think is, and what is this is a historical photo, and then a photograph I took of the same landscape. And from a personal point of view, I arrived at this project. Let me share this. Let me share this image with you. So hopefully you can now see that. Can people see that? So so this top image is Nicholas. I'm not sure when that was from, but the bottom image was taken in July. So this is the same place. This is looking over the wetlands. This for me, this is the first time. You know, I feel very privileged. I've been to a few of our projects now, but this was the first time I'd been to REGUA, and just to see the impact that has happened in a relatively short space of time, I would say. So put it this way, this landscape has changed in my lifetime. So I was doing what I thought was an old standing forest, but was very quickly pointed out to me that it was around 20 plus years old. So do you want to just give us a bit of that? Well, you know, when was that first picture taken, Nicholas, roughly?
That first bit was taken actually in 1987. It didn't change at all significantly until about 2004. So you're right, Dan. This is roughly what it looked like 25 years ago. And this was a working farm, and you can see the mountains in the background that I was describing a short while ago. And this was a working farm based on milking cows and all the pastures had been formed. It typically used an African improved grass called brachiaria, and all the forest had been taken down. The land had been drained and the pastures established. And you can see what was the main house, which is now being converted into a lodge. The work in its restoration started with the World Land Trust. They encouraged us. We were able to secure this property in 2003 thanks to a donation from Tasso Leventis. And he came up and walked into that veranda of the house at the top, and he says, "Nicholas, what would you do with this?" And I said it would be a life dream to convert this into a botanical garden. I'm very interested in plants and trees, and we're a bit spoilt for tree species here, Dan. You know, there are about, of the Atlantic rainforest, there are 20,000 vascular plants, roughly 1,000 orchids just by themselves in this region. So at the time, it was about 5% of all orchids on Earth that were found here. And we have about the whole of the Atlantic rainforest it's a biome. So it's a particular type of vegetational area. And it is very, very rich because it not only has the lowlands and really the areas of dunes next to the coastline, but it goes up to about 2,000 meters above sea level. So it has this fantastic gradient, and it covers latitudes between almost the equator and all the way down to about 30 degrees south, 25 degrees south. So you have a massive latitudinal gradient, and you have this physical gradient that's going up. And as you climb up, you lose about every 100 meters, you lose a degree of centigrade. So it becomes very cool at the top. And so becomes very, obviously, they're very exposed, these granite domes that form the peaks of this past range. And they have these fantastic bromeliads and orchids, and they have this mist, and you even have this sort of very dwarf, stunted forest, which supports a myriad of orchids. Things that Darwin described back when he arrived here in 1830. And the lowlands were all drained at this time. And so I became fascinated with plants. And I was saying there are about 8,000 tree species in the Atlantic rainforest, of which 4,000 tree species in the Atlantic rainforest, of which we've cataloged about close to 1,000. So we're really spoiled for tree species here.
Yeah.
And some tree species are as rare as the animals and all the animals that we try and protect here. Some of them are really down to one tree individual. They've been heavily logged in the area in its past, the Atlantic rainforest. So the idea here was to try and create a botanical gardens whereby we'd be able to gather some of the rare seeds that we found in the forest and bring them down and plant them in this area of lowland, of the pastures. And the World Land Trust helped us in its early days. And we for the first 6 years, we received generous funding from the World Land Trust to really make this what today now is the most emblematic image of a past and present.
Yeah, I think it's, in terms of trees and plants, this is incredible example, this project. So just put this into kind of a context. So I think there's now around about 12% of the Atlantic forest is left. Now, this isn't a continuous forest either. This is fragmented. But if you include all of these plant species and tree species that are protected and have been replanted by the team at REGUA, if you combine that with, I think it's 470 species of bird, I think there's 73 species of amphibian, I'm reading this here, 430 species of butterfly, 61 species of mammal. Whilst I was there, saw tapirs roaming, saw sloth, capybara, saw caiman. I was only there for a few days, and I saw 160 species of bird, which for me was quite staggering as a birder. So, and then also on top of that, 240 species of dragonfly and damselfly. This place is rich. This place is just incredible. And for me to walk around there, to see some of these things, was so inspiring, and to come away and see what the team of REGUA have done is really quite incredible. So before we get on to what the opportunity that we've got, and we'll show a map of the reserve, is the other thing that really stood out for me, and which I think is really important with all of our partners, is that connection not only with the land but also with the people in the region. So, and trust me, if you get the chance to go out there, so this is one of the places where it's really possible to go and visit and go and see the impact that they've had, is that if you are lucky enough to sit in the Land Rover with Nicholas, you're going to be driven around and you're going to be stopping every 5 minutes to talk to somebody at the side of the road that he knows from this local community. So before we kind of get onto the kind of the real opportunity we want to talk about, could you just give us a bit more about how you work with the community and the work that yourself and Raquel are doing with the people in this area?
The community really is most important. When you have a proposition of land conservation on the scale that we're talking about, Dan, it's really important to involve them at almost at every step. In certain ways, we're quite lucky that there were no indigenous folk, in the sense that there's no sort of traditional indigenous folk in this region. It was very hostile. It was, in fact, it was visited in 1805 by a British geologist, and he describes this in his narrative. And the lowlands were always flooded all the way to the Guanabara Bay, which is quite a large bay. And this particular habitat had many, many species because it was flooded at most of the year. We're in a region which is sort of tropical because it rains here around about 2,200 millimeters of rain a year, which led to this exuberance of life. And as a result, it was one of the last areas to be conquered and explored by farmers. Of course, if you acquainted with Brazilian history, you remember that the early explorers would give parcels of land to those who funded the early explorations. And of course, that's how Brazil was more or less divided in a sort of latitude all the way to the Tordesilhas at the time, and then subdivided and subdivided. We're in an area which has a lot of private land, and the farms originally back in the 1800s, very extensive. And really extensive because they were almost impenetrable, very difficult to drain because it's quite low lying. So altogether, it was very, very harsh conditions for local people. And in fact, John Moore, the geologist in 1805, he describes people having a very sickly and ill countenance to them, which he describes, because it was difficult to master all the buildup of fevers and malarias and choleras and things like that. So it was very difficult. And so we have this legacy. Brazil has this legacy whereby abolition of slavery really only took place in 1888. It was it's the last country to have abolished slavery. And so we have this very painful legacy of reaching to a democracy. And in that sense, it's very important to be able to work alongside the local community in order to present opportunities, to present learning capacities, so that they can actually also develop their own skills and go on to universities and schooling and things like that. So when I arrived in 1979, a young lad of 19 years old, the houses were very poor indeed, many thatched huts, no bathrooms, no bus, really, all roads really poor. And we've sort of like accompanied the whole development as Brazil has invested in education, transport, health, and offering opportunities for social mobilization. And of course, the early settlers saw this land was always an opportunity to become rich, to be able to convert, get paid to knock down forest, put it into cultivation. And you have this historical connection. And and relevance. And so today, and that was the model of prosperity for many years. And so it's taken a long time for us to be able to introduce the new concept that we have to work alongside nature and support it the best we can in order to preserve some of these ecological services that at some point we need to put into and protect. So altogether, we've been working alongside our local community to be able to help them through education program, through bringing children in, offering work, and teaching them the relevance of trying to support large-scale conservation as opposed to development. I don't know if I'm answering very well your question.
No, I think that's great. And I think this is kind of brings me on to what I might do is I'll share a map that I have of the reserve. And I think you can kind of, if you want to just talk us a bit about the reserve, and then what we can do is we can get on to this opportunity that we've got to protect another parcel of pastoralist landscapes. Let me try and share this again. So so this map does a couple of things. So one, you can see whereabouts we are talking about in Brazil, about 2 hours, or roughly 2 hours north, depending on traffic from Rio. But yeah, do you want to just talk us through a little bit about this map, because this kind of covers your reserve and the area that we're talking about?
Okay, I think the sort of like the basis of the map shows areas in green, which is a state park. It's a paper park. It's the largest park in the state of Rio de Janeiro. State of Rio de Janeiro isn't that small. It's about the size of Costa Rica. As a country, so it's large, and the Três Picos Park is roughly 70,000 hectares, or roughly close to and it represented the largest contiguous forest in the state of Rio de Janeiro. It's a paper park in the sense that the government decrees of ecological significance. Doesn't mean to say that it actually solves all the problems that go along with kind of people living inside, crops, people hunting, extraction of wood, and catching birds and things like that. And so we started our work in the main block there of the blue that you see, with the support of World Land Trust to be able to secure the Matumbo Gap and key areas that were the best preserved. And worked for many years, and then we started realizing that our watershed, our catchment, which is roughly 100,000 acres, between the 4 points, you see the orange of Hermes land, and it drops down in a sort of like a 7 o'clock direction to the lower Vecchi areas, and then it reaches at the 11 o'clock, goes up to the very large Cosolino property, which World Land Trust helped us buy last year. And if you pick that sort of almost a rectangle of between the blue points at the far end, you see an area that is vitally important in terms of landscape protection. So the main block was we managed to secure very early on, almost to about 2010. And since 2010, we've been expanding because we've seen that nature works in scale. The wonderful species that Dan was telling us all, and this sheer quantity of diversity which we have been encountered here, we need to offer a larger home. Nature can't really be contained in 4 walls. It really is a very sort of organic, but we need to protect as much as possible. And our conservation strategy is more or less. Sorry, I didn't. Do you lose me for a minute?
Yeah, yeah. It might be, if you're happy. It might be if you want to just turn your camera off for a moment, and then.
Okay.
Sometimes that helps. We'd rather hear. Okay. We know what you look like now, so.
Oh, we got the picture. Thanks a lot, Dan. So yeah. This rectangle formed by the light blue parts at the 4 corners, that forms the Guapiaçu watershed, roughly 100,000 acres. And we've been trying to amass this because our conservation strategy based on endless data that's been researched has told us that this watershed still preserves about 60% forest, which needs to be all included, contiguous, so that we reconnect forest fragments and provide a larger home, a more consistent home for the biodiversity that Dan talked about. As we reproduce, so do animals and plants. But if we don't find a bigger home for them to be able to root into, to be able to expand into, unfortunately, we limit the sort of genetic quality of all the biodiversity that we have here. And we see this and the studies that indicate that this is the way to go forward, to secure as much land as possible, make this into to take this away from a paper park, to be able to preserve these areas. And we do this through land purchase. We do this through restoration, planting areas that are previously in grassland, just like the earlier photograph, and also even in part rewilding and creating wetlands. This mix, by telling people to our principal programs here are protecting what remains, reaching to local community to engage with them and tell them why this is so important, where they live is so important. Then we'd also do another program which is on restoration. So we've actually reached our 1 millionth tree planted since 2004. And we've also have a very robust research program offering this watershed as an outdoor laboratory for all the local universities to be able to study and to be able to research and find out how this mega important biodiversity hub works, so that we can get this interrelationship between plants and fauna in a way that we can preserve it, replicate it, and enhance it. And lastly, we have a tourism program, and the tourism program is really trying to bring people to be part of this and to see how conservation works at a very local level.
So I think also, excuse me, to add to this as well is that this whole project has a wider impact as well. So I think you were saying, Nicholas, once before, it's about the water in this area as well, provides water for 2 million people downstream. So this has a wider context outside of just being about protecting that land, protecting species, and this is and the biodiversity. This kind of falls naturally into a World Land Trust project. So it does all of those things, but also provides all of these other benefits as well, which is hugely important in all of these landscapes. So, but I'm just going to move this on a little bit now. So what you'll see on this map is an area in orange. And this is the opportunity we've got. So we have an opportunity to protect another 180 hectares. So it's a considerable size again. And this is a plot that sits nicely between adjoining plots that are already protected and managed by the team in REGUA. And so I have got one more image which I'll show, which I'll come down. If this is going to work, technology, please don't let me down. This is the area. So this is the Hermes plot that we're talking about. So Nicholas, do you want to just tell us a little bit about this? People can see firsthand what it looks like, but what's the condition of that forest? And then, I might join in with a little bit of my experience of going there as well. So,
fantastic! This is such an emblematic photograph, and it really shows how exploration occurs. You can see a road leading into a clearing in the middle of the photograph. And this really is what's happening in much of the Atlantic rainforest when we don't have local partners who do pioneer work in trying to change perception and trying to put land back into conservation in the long term. The Hermes plot sits at a crucial part of the Guapiaçu Valley. To the right, on the other side of the ridgeline, is actually a major town, and with 45,000 people living there. And they've always used this as a hunting ground, this valley. And to our minds, this is unacceptable, because the reserve spans around. We were on the top, if you remember from the map, we were on the top right-hand corner, but the major part of the reserve where all the muriquis are, all this very special biodiversity, all these birds. Don't forget, in this whole Guapiaçu watershed of 100,000 acres, we actually have 490 birds cataloged. So that's roughly 4.5% of all the birds in the world can be found in this very, very watershed, which is quite staggering. And so what we want to do, when we talk about nature needs scale, is that we need to strengthen ecological corridors, and which allows species to move freely across the valley without being impeded by hunters or people living in urban encroachment, which is always a bit of a horrible issue for us, because people see these opportunities of these little clearings. They buy a piece of land. The locals are willing to sell them, and because they think they need the money, and then they think it's a good opportunity, and then they live next to a little hub of social development. But this erodes the quality of this whole watershed, and we need this free run of animals, of plants, so that it allows for genetic diversity. And I think the genetic diversity, we talk about these terms quite freely, but it adds to the resilience of nature. Today, the three biggest problems facing the world are, according to the United Nations, climate change, biodiversity loss, and water insecurity. So, and these are the three issues that are at the heart of REGUA's work effort, is to try and show that through a model we can actually develop and go against it. We can actually improve climate, local climate. We can actually work against biodiversity extinction, and we can also promote water security, as Dan was saying, that this is so precious. It's a precious resource that fundamentally we need to protect large watersheds as best we can in order to protect their water. And so it's not just about one particular property. It's about stitching together the valley into a continuous landscape of protection. And as we had this sort of model for so many years of development, we need to be really the instigators of a green revolution, in the sense that we need to put areas, and we need to build this up in building blocks. So this is a perfect building block to set here, very close to Rio, an international airport with exceedingly high biodiversity, and show people, use this as a model of inspiration for other projects elsewhere. That's what drives us along, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really important point. It's about stitching those things together. It's about having a plan and having a longer-term plan. So, and this is an area where we've worked with you, supported you for a long time, but going there, I could see this bigger picture of this landscape. But with regards to my visit and actually standing in this plot was quite a unique experience. But I think what's really important is to talk about, you can see this road that's kind of running through this valley. Now, when we went out and we went to visit this particular plot to have a look, what was really clear for me was actually there's this opportunity for development which we need to try and challenge. So, because ultimately you kind of start on this journey up to the plot on a road, a fairly substantial road for the area, and you start to see these properties, and at the bottom of at the start of this journey, there's kind of some large properties, and I think, Nicholas, you'd mentioned that some of these properties were from people including second homes from Rio. But as you kind of moved up, the road became more or less established. But what was interesting, you could still see properties there. You could see electricity kind of going up into following this road. And as you kind of got further up, and you got to a point of where actually the road stopped, and we got out and we walked into this opening. But what you could see was this perfect opportunity for development as we were moving along, and that's for me was kind of the real kind of standout threat, alongside all of these other things that Nicholas has spoken about with regards to things like agriculture, but hunting, etc. But it was about trying to stop that happening. But what was really amazing was once you got beyond that track, was to be able to stand in this forest and listen. So the noise, that background noise kind of stopped, and then you just started to hear the wildlife. You just started to hear the birds calling. You could hear the stream that was running through this landscape as well, which is coming from a regular plot further up the valley as well. So, and it just became really obvious to me that this is an area that we need to protect, and we need to help to deliver this for the greater project that the REGUA team are doing. So the other thing that was really interesting for me was actually to meet the family as well, so that we're selling this plot. And I think they're an important story to tell. So this is an area of land that's been in their family for about 50 years or something like that, Nicholas, they were saying. But we met with them, and actually to see them and to speak with them about, what they're going to do by allowing this sale to go through to REGUA, was actually going to have a long-standing commitment to this area and to wildlife. So for me, this was it was a really inspiring trip, but it was also kind of a light bulb moment to really understand what's going on in this area. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Nicholas.
Yeah, the name of the land is called Hermes. It's he bought this property, as you were saying, 50 years ago, and he brought up he has 11 children, and he had 11 children, and they've all been very successful. They left the valley, and he's now got this property, and he wants to sell it. It's really difficult dealing with 11, a family of 11. Fortunately, they're all very nice people and very understandable. And one of the secrets that we found is one thing is Nicholas saying, we're very interested in buying this, and really and when we had a chance with Dan, for them to meet Dan, the Hermes' widow and 3 children came. They're all in their 60s as well. And it gave one of the key questions they asked Dan is, why do you want this? It's such a simple and vital question, and we've been stumped a couple of times because people just don't understand from local perception why this is important. And I think and Dan was there, he reflected, and he says, and he just answered, you don't see this everywhere. And they listened to Dan talking about the precious biodiversity, much as what he was just mentioning to us all now. And coming from Dan in English, obviously he wasn't able to say all this in Portuguese. They realized that it evidenced sincerity. And I think this bridged finally the gap, because everyone wants a little bit more. They're selling. They're not selling. It's not like a discount price, but we managed to bring them down into something sensible. And it was very important for Dan to be out here and tell them in his sincere manner and his experienced manner why this mattered. And everything that I'm saying here is what Dan sort of said silently to them, and that was perfect. So really, So there is, it's really the two, it really is very important that the World Land Trust is here to meet some of these donors in these exceptional cases whereby we're changing perceptions, why forest is important. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. It was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was a really interesting experience for me to actually meet, because I've been at the trust for 13 years, and I think that's probably only the second time that I've actually met the people that we're trying to purchase the land from. So having the opportunity to speak to them was something that was an experience. It's kind of giving me goosebumps thinking about it, being able to have that conversation with them and try to explain to them the bigger picture, but also explain to them that their name's going to carry on. So, and that was, for me, was really important. So look, we're kind of coming towards the end of this this chat. So I have put a message into the chat. So if there's any questions sort of in the next 5 minutes or so, I'm happy to ask those questions as well. I'm going to show you a short video in a moment, and then I'm just going to give you a bit more information about our spring appeal. But Nicholas, if there was one thing you were going to say to the people on this call, what would it be? I'll put you on the spot. I can come back to that if you want me to come back in a moment. Give you a minute to think about that. I can show the video, or
I think just to add, it's always good to put people on the spot because it was most sincere. It's not about what REG can do. It's about what we can do, and really conservation is something which involves everybody and cuts all ages and everybody, because this is a communal demand, a communal need. And so what we can do is really limited, but with the support of the World Land Trust and of people who are supporting the World Land Trust, we can make these changes. These changes are possible, and this project, we're looking at succession. So Raquel and myself, my wife and I, we're sort of slowly moving up for the younger generation to take over. But we're leaving such a great foundation for them to build on this. As Dan was saying, stressing the importance of community. It's not only about the local community, but it's about the people from Rio, the people from our local, from everywhere around, that they can see and sense that something long-lasting has been done. We cannot do this by ourselves. Even though Brazil is quite a rich nation, it has its own problems. And really, we owe all of this to organizations like the World Land Trust, who have been fundamental. And it's not just REGUA. You support, the World Land Trust is supporting so many organizations around the world to do such fantastic work. And it's all about what we can do. And every one of us takes a small part of this and feels part of this. And that's something which is really so important for me to pass to everyone listening.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's something that we talk about at World Land Trust. This isn't about what World Land Trust has done. We can't do anything without our supporters and our donors and our partners. This is a collective effort. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do something really amazing again. So look, I'm going to show you a quick video, and then I will come back with a kind of an ending comment. So let's hope technology doesn't let me down. So I'm going to end on this. So hang on a second. So there's a quick question that's come up actually. What will happen to the property that's there? So are you talking about the any kind of buildings that are on? I presume you're talking about any buildings that might be in this particular plot. I don't know if you want to go through that, Nicholas.
Well, the principal aim would be to operate it, man it, so that we can actually ensure that nobody's hunting. That's one of the main reasons. We'll be planting in that clearing that you saw. That's most the aim to do that, and we'll be sending researchers there. There are lots of researchers who want to study elements of the. We have huge number we have 700 students come every year to REGUA, and really we use this as an open door laboratory, and they will be studying elements there. But that's the basic, is to protect it and ensure that the trees keep growing and that it returns to its former state.
So yeah, another point has been brought up by Patricia in the chat. So within this, so with this funding, or for this particular project, excuse me, losing my voice. This particular project, it's not just the land purchase that we're talking about. There is also funding for a ranger in this landscape too, because with all of our projects that we're going to provide the funding and we're going to protect these areas, we want to ensure that our partner has the resources to support that, support the management of these landscapes. So within this funding, there is funds for a ranger, another ranger for REGUA, and that's part of the funding we're talking about. So with this, what we need to do is that we have a generous private donor who has provided funding for matching up to 197,000. So for us, this is an opportunity to provide donors with the chance to double whatever they donate. So meaning that they'll have double the impact. Previously, this was only opportunities that really arose around the time of the autumn appeal. But we've had the chance with this particular one because actually one of the reasons for my visit was we actually took somebody out there to see this landscape, and because we know that actually that really helps inspire people, engage people. So this particular donor, which we are extremely grateful for, will be matching any donations made to the appeal. So and the appeal is a launch today. So please take a look at the information on our shiny new website. Have a look at the project, and hopefully this has helped inspire you and provided you with a bit more information about the project and the project area. And Nicholas, I don't know if you want to just flick your camera back on, but one thing I can vouch for, and you would fully expect me to say this, but one thing about the team at REGUA is they get things done. So they deliver on those projects, and this is a timely opportunity, and those discussions have happened with landowners. So this is an opportunity that we want to take, and we want to be able to help REGUA to be able to deliver this as part of their wider project. So look, a huge thank you from me. But also a huge thank you to Nicholas for joining me, because I know it's sort of early in the morning there. And apologies, we were a little bit delayed. We had a few technical issues, but Nicholas and I managed to find our way through them, which is one of the things I'm most proud of this morning, actually. So look, thank you very much for your time. And you will all receive the video of this chat that we've had. And if you've got any questions, look, please reach out to the team at Wildland Trust. So if if you contact us at donations@Worldland Trust, then we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. So look, thank you very much for your time. And thank you again, Nicholas, for joining us. And yeah, we will, yeah, hopefully we will do more of these in the future.
Wonderful.
I'm going to end it. So, Nicholas, feel free to stay on for a second. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody.